been following you on LinkedIn for a while now. I love your hilarious short videos that you put
Thank
out.
you. Thank you.
I'm curious, what inspired you?
I think it started as an outlet, right? Because you face a lot of things at work, and there are certain things that you can't be too direct about. Like obviously, it land you in trouble. So for me, it started when I wanted to explore some of those frustrations where you face a lot of things at work, and they're probably not the best of habits, but then people still do it. So I wanted to talk about them on my social media just as an outlet. But what is surprising is to see it resonate with so many other people. I think that kind of kept me to do more. But it just started as an outlet to talk about the things that I see and observe at work.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant approach because a lot of people that go and they rant on LinkedIn and they do these negative things where you've taken the opposite spin on that, where you've taken some of these frustrations that you're dealing with, maybe with work or with colleagues, whatever it was, and you've turned that into something hilarious, which is generally down different sketches. And it's you playing multiple characters, maybe the protagonist and the antagonist on one side.
Yes.
So, how did you even come up with that format for those folks who haven't seen your videos yet?
All right. So the inspiration comes from a stand-up comic in New York. Her name is Alexis Gay, and so she does a lot of the Bay Area slash tech slash Silicon Valley kind of videos, which is the first time I came across such content where it is works and humor. And then after that, I came across a lot more people. So there is Corporate Bro. There's Corporate Natalie. There are a bunch of other people who do these work humor, but Alexis Gay is the first person. And I just imitated her and I tried to create a similar type of content. So where I pick up one topic and I kind of talk about. For me, the pet peeve is product management because I feel like there's a lot of humor to be kind of derived from there. So started with that, but then then expanded to like general Zoom meetings and general like work related things. So that's kind of where I got the idea from.
Yeah, and all of your videos, almost all the videos that I've seen have gone viral. So I'm curious, what have been some of the key learnings in all of these great performing videos?
Again, to me, this is retrospective because for me, videos are very new, relatively new. I started doing them like a year and a half back, but then that's the first time that I've been doing these videos. So for me, there is no specific learning that I've started with, but then in retrospect, there have definitely been some learnings. For example, one thing is I've made sure that I've kept it broad enough so that people can relate. I've not kept it too niche. So that way, even for example, even when I talk about product management, I make sure that there are people outside of product management that also relate to it. So that is definitely one. And second one is I think I try not to go too rogue or too hard or direct on some professions. That way you don't end up offending anyone. I think that is kept it safe. So most of the videos, even though they're funny, I make sure that I try not to offend any profession or like put down a profession. That's kept it honest. So that is definitely these are the two learnings that again in retrospect that I can think of.
Yeah, that's curious that you said purposely don't try to offend anyone. How do you balance that? Because it is a satirical approach. We are poking fun at some of these
Yeah.
things, but how do you do it? The reason I ask is if brands want to emulate this kind of
Mm-hmm.
approach, many of them are afraid, like you said, of offending people. How do you balance your creative outlet without pushing over the edge?
I think one advantage that I have is I've done these roles, right? So I've started my career in support, I've done sales, I've done product management, I've done product marketing. So it kind of gives me the license to kind of make fun of myself. And when you make fun of yourself, it's very easy to get away with it because you've done those things. So you're not making fun of someone else. And through that, if others are able to relate to it, then that's a good advantage. I think that is one thing. And second thing is, I don't know, because I've been creating memes on the work topic for a very long time, I kind of intuitively know, like through practice and through feedback, that these are the kind of things that tend to offend people. So I guess some of it is also from intuition. So it's not exactly something that like write down and then I review. Most of the time, my nature of comedy itself is to make sure that I don't offend anyone.
Yeah, it's very lighthearted, but it's very hilarious as well too. But like you said, I guess the self-deprecating humor is one that I take as well too, and I think you do it very well. I didn't know you had all this
Thank you.
background, so it makes sense because I think we talk about realness and authenticity and all those stuff, but you could definitely tell that you've been in those experiences. And anyone, like you said, it is broad enough where I'm not in management, but I could still resonate with those. I still find them hilarious just because they're so real. There's no, how do I say? I usually so many corporate videos and they're writing out scripts and sketches and things like that, but yours seems like they're taken literally from real life scenarios. The language is almost identical. It's like basically what you would see in a day-to-day kind of work role, but you've just amplified it just a little bit just to make that humorous approach to it.
Yeah, that was very surprising to me, Joe, actually, when the language resonated because I always thought, because I've done like three jobs and I've interact with a lot of people. But I never thought the language is going to be so similar across countries and across different geographies. So it looks like we've all been in the same Zoom meeting. So that was definitely for me.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were saying. Like, if you want to go viral, you want to have a bigger reach, then this broad-based humor, things we can relate to. So topics like work from home or being on
Yeah.
Zoom or dealing with different types of colleagues is something that I'm based in Singapore, but originally from the US. And so I still
Okay.
find it hilarious that your videos they still resonate with me. So
Thank you.
awesome. I'm curious, like, have you seen other brands doing this? I'm trying to think of for the people on the marketing side or on the sales side. I
Hmm.
know there's like sales humor and some of those guys, but do you see more corporate entities creating humorous videos like yourself? Or if so, what would be the challenges they would have to overcome?
I think the specific challenge, this is what I keep telling people because I've been like trying to work with brands to see if I can emulate because one of my mission is to make sure that I was also in marketing. I know how bland marketing can get. So I want to help brands use talk from a brand's voice. They almost always assume that you're trying to sell something. So you have that barrier to breach before you can kind of reach an audience. For example, when I'm talking from, let's say, my own personal LinkedIn account, I have a lot of freedom because I don't have anything to sell and purely doing this. So people don't have any apprehensions in engaging with me. Whereas if I'm talking from a brand's perspective, there's almost always this thought that, okay, are they trying to sell me something? And even as a brand, like even when I work with brands, right? Even when we try to do these videos, there's always that pressure to try to plug the product or try to plug like one of their services, which is not always going to work. So my recommendation would be to see if you can leverage personal branding. For example, let's say identify someone in your company who can probably be the face of the company and use them to talk about. For example, what I would do is, let's say if I'm targeting market, if my let's say I sell a product or service for marketers, I would pick someone within the company who's probably has a brand already and get them to create these content and use them as a vehicle for these content than using your own LinkedIn page. Because what I've seen also is when you post content from like an official page, the reach is not as good as when you post it from a personal account because people want to engage with people more than they want to engage with.
Absolutely. I've started seeing that trend with companies like SalesLoft, Vidyard, where they've taken essentially creators, whether they
Yes.
be internally or external. Some of them are internal, where they have them, they're doing on their own, building their personal brand, but the company likes them so much, they're getting so much engagement
Yeah.
that they've started distributing them not only across their own individual, but also the company channels as well, too. And on the external side, I've seen people from, for example, Vidyard, someone who was a really good creator, and then they had him come on board as like a evangelist, whatever you want to call it, because
Yes.
he had such a massive following and people were loving his content. That's a good point because if you look at the algorithm, you look at what you said, people engage with people more than they do brands by leveraging individuals, having them create the content, and then maybe distributing it across theirs as well as their companies. You're able to bypass some of that challenges you were talking about earlier.
Yep, yep. And that's a good point that you mentioned, right? Where people are now bringing on board creators, which I think will happen a lot more. Where if let's say you manage to build an audience for yourself on any social media platform, that makes you valuable to an employer, where they can leverage your audience, and if it's a relevant audience, even better, right? So I think it's even more important for people to start focusing on that because earlier, if you had a lot of social media following, it didn't mean much professionally, but now the game is changing. So you will be able to leverage that as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely a huge proponent of that. I've built my career in multiple businesses, so I can
Yeah.
definitely attest. Now, in addition to the short form videos on LinkedIn and other channels, you've also dabbled into memes now. So, how
Yes.
did you transition from, like I said, I saw the videos into building humorous memes around marketing, sales, and other business related topics?
I think memes have started way before the videos, right? I've been creating memes even before they were called memes. I used to take like funny images from the internet and try to add some context around it. But recently, what I've started doing is I found a niche. Earlier, it was like memes on any random topic. Now, what I've started doing is focusing on memes with work and the similar content. So, I want to kind of build my personal brand around professional humor or business humor. So, that's kind of what I want to be known for. And videos and memes are two vehicles. And I even tried writing, but then my strength is more on the memes and video side. So that is one part of the memes. The second part with the memes is that I also recently co-founded a company called Supermeme.ai, which is an AI meme generator. So a bunch of us, from LinkedIn and Twitter, we got together and we started this product. And that's also where then I started exploring memes from a product standpoint. Like how do you, because I know intuitively how to create memes, but then the challenge was how do you productize it? How do you get the technology to figure out what template to pick and what copy to write. So I think that's been a very interesting journey to understand how do you teach a machine to create memes. So I think that's where I am in the meme journey right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I've looked at your platform and I found it fascinating. I'm curious, what percentage currently on the platform is memes that you have created, whether it's templates versus
Mhm.
those that AI has generated?
Almost everything that you see on the platform is AI generated. So what we do is we just give it the input, saying that these are some example links that you can learn from. And because we're bootstrap, we're also very kind of tight on the amount of information that we can give it. So I would say the platform is impressive enough that what it does is based on your input. Like, let's say you want to create a meme, the marketing podcast. So you can say something like, "This is the best podcast on the world," and it will automatically figure out the right template and right copy to use. So our target audience are marketers who want to use memes to market their product or service, but then they're not able to. It's not something that you can just pick up and try. So we want to enable those creators and marketers to use memes to promote themselves. That's the thought process.
Interesting. So if I heard that correctly, it's not only towards specific topics like marketing, sales, product management. So it sounds like you've not only moved beyond topic related memes like marketing, sales, product management, but you've also are helping specific brands create memes about their products. Is that right?
Yes, that's the goal, and it's a lot more challenging than we thought. So what we have right now is a platform where you can literally enter any text about your product. It can be about a problem, and what I usually recommend is the promotional aspect of it. A lot of like the common mistake that most brand marketers do is try to use memes to promote their product, but that usually falls flat because that comes across as you selling it. What will be better is if, let's say, you're identifying a top problem in your target audience and something that resonates with them, and use memes to talk about that problem, which you have a better chance of going viral, you have a better chance of reaching more people than trying to use memes to sell your products, which is what we recommend. But then our platform doesn't restrict you. You can literally enter any text you want, and it will figure out a way to generate a meme from that.
Got it. That's what I was going to ask as well too, because the devil's in the details, and a lot of marketers, when they have this power, will automatically start putting in features and specs and stuff like that,
Yes.
and it's gonna divert from any type of humor which was intended to do.
I think that's the marketer's curse, though, because we usually carry a lead target, we usually carry a sales target, and our instinct is to go put the product first. But then it usually doesn't give you the return that they expect. Versus if you flip it and you talk about, if you don't just talk about the problem, people will know. For example, let's say if you've been talking about marketing all through and you've not mentioned your company or your brand, people will find out. Like the moment they find your content valuable, they will do the work of finding out who you are, who you work for, what product or service you offer, and that is where you get your brand reach. So a lot of people think that if I don't talk about my product or if I don't plug my product or service, people won't know. That's actually not true because people, the moment they find you interesting, they will take the effort to go find out what you do, and that's where you get your reach from.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And I think this is counterintuitive to a lot of thing that's going on LinkedIn right now is measuring and attribution everything, particularly in
Mm.
B2B. So if you do create these memes and you put them on different platforms and they get shared on dark social, then obviously some of that stuff, or actually maybe most of it, is not trackable. And then as a marketer, you're like, oh, my boss is, oh, why are you wasting your time creating memes all day? When we know, but you and I, that it does have an impact on the brand and perception and stuff like that. But yeah, any thoughts on that one? I know it's a tricky one.
No, I think, like you said, you have to almost separate yourself from the marketers too. So because for me, I've been a marketer, but I've somehow never associated myself to be a marketer. For me, that's something that I always thought that I can't do. That's why when, let's say, when I was handling my personal social media, I am a very different person than when I tried handling my corporate social media. Then I realized that for me, it's very difficult for me to represent a brand. It's a lot more easier for me to represent myself. And I'm natural, I'm more expressive, and it got me the results that I didn't intend. For example, for Super, all three of us are pretty active on social media. That's where we get most of our leads from, most of our sign-ups from. But we never talk about saying that this is the product that we do. Once in a while, of course, we do just to kind of promote. But most of our content is memes, or for example, I mostly just post humorous content. And people through that discover, they go on my LinkedIn, they find out what I do, and they see the product. So you will almost always get your indirect returns provided you add value to your content. It will start going downhill if, let's say, if people start knowing you because of brand. It shouldn't be like, oh, Sanjeev always talks about Supermeme. That's not going to work. It will start diminishing. So you just have to focus on posting good content, and you will get that indirect returns back to your brand.
I couldn't agree more. This is something I'm constantly teaching my master students is when you're talking about content, the three E, entertaining them, which I think you do a brilliant job of, educating them, which hopefully I do okay.
Yeah.
And the third one is engaging them. So bringing them into the conversation, them having them co-create content with you, whatever it is, like spark conversations, all these
Yes.
things that good marketers should be doing. I would say
Definitely.
that 90%, maybe not that high, but most do not, because like you said, it's tied back closely to a specific product. And it's, yes, we see it time and time again.
Yeah, so that's something that I learned. But yeah, entertaining, engagement, and education. So I think that's you framed it brilliantly because that's what people want. People want to be entertained. People want to be educated. They want to learn something new, and they want to contribute. They want to be part of the conversation. Which and if you look at most marketing content, it is one way. It's broadcast. Like here I've written something. I want you to read it, or I've created a video. I want the kind of content that will resonate with your audience are the ones where you're able to touch their emotional barrier and that will not happen when you talk about your product. I think that's kind of where you like marketers should focus outwards, right? Yeah, you have a product that does something, but you're selling it to people who are going through a lot more. Your canvas to create content is much broader when you focus on the people who you're selling to than the product that you're selling.
Yeah, and I think going back to your approach in humor, there is that emotional connection that we have with you through your videos, through your characters. And by default, we want to find out more. Like I said, I was one of those, so I'm definitely guilty of it. Is looking at your LinkedIn profile, looking at your products, looking at your services to figure out, okay, what does this guy do? Because I really like him. I love his sketches, and I want to see. It's reciprocatory, where essentially you're giving back, and then people want to return some of that goodness that you're giving out in the world.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So these are some super practical tips. I'm curious if there's any last wise words you would give to any of the marketers or content creators in terms of injecting humor into their marketing, something we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I think it should be a company wide, it should be a strategy. So I think okay, what I believe in is marketers need a way to stand out. There is no question about it. Competing for attention, so you need a way to stand out. If you want to use humor, it can't be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to post a meme or I'm going to post a video. It can't be like, it has to be a strategic thing which needs signed off from your head of marketing. And you really need to figure out a way to get people to start doing and encourage people to start doing that. And they may not be even in your marketing team. Look around the company, there might be people in like other teams, like, doing so well on social media. All you have to do is work with them as a marketing team. It's not that you have to post all the content. Enabling others to do that is also a way for marketing team to contribute. So what I would do is think beyond just like the core marketing team, find evangelists, find people who are naturally good at humor, who are naturally good at social media, and enable them and empower them to post more. I think that is an untapped area because marketing teams tend to look inwards. I think we have to look at the entire company. It's because almost everyone is a creator now, right? Everyone has Instagram, everyone has TikTok, they're recording videos, they're posting. So it's not just only marketers or creators. So as a team, just find people within the company and enable them to post more. I think that will give us a lot more leverage.
That's some really good tips. And I was just thinking about this right before this session as well, too, is a lot of marketers that I know are not actually creating content for themselves for their own channels. Maybe they're creating too much for their own company and they're burned out. But to your
Yes.
point, finding those creators, finding those people with natural humor, injecting them into your company's content, because like you said, great ideas, great humor comes not only from the marketing team, but beyond that. So finding those people, bringing them into the conversation, helping them create content, and then feeding that back into your own companies is a very smart way. So I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all these practical insights with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe, for having me on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to today's episode. I'm sure, like I said, if you've watched Sanjeev's videos, you're going to be laughing as well, too. So feel free to share this episode, and we'll see you on the next episode of the B2B Marketing Asia podcast.